Sajama Mitta, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Nice to be here, Will.
Sajama, you acquired and are now the CEO of an environmental compliance services business. But it wasn't inevitable that you'd end up as an entrepreneur. In fact, you started your career by getting a PhD in data science. So today we're going to hear about your journey from that to acquisition entrepreneur. So start us off, please, Sajama, with some background on you.
I'm an engineer by training. And as you noted, I at one point I wanted to be a professor in a university. So that's why the PhD. So I at the end of that, I was trying to decide what I want to do. You know, one of the things I guess about me, you know, I find many different things interesting. I enjoy, most of all, learning so many different things. So I did, after my PhD, I did investing for about 15 years. And I worked in many small and big companies. And the general theme was that we would, we would invest on behalf of pension funds like CalPERS, CalSTRS, CPPIB, other Norwegian pension fund, etc. And it was perfect because, people sometimes ask me when I was in that part of my career, how is it, you are an engineer, you're a researcher, what are you doing here? And I found that actually it was not any different because there were interesting problems to solve, new things to learn and apply and improve systems. And so I found that they were both equally interesting. And then the same thing here now, as I'm doing this, I find it's a different set of problems. You know, I'm not writing code all day long. I'm not reading papers by economists. But, it's more the practical side of economics, I guess. So,
well, we are gonna return to that and have you kind of talk about what the problems are, what your day-to-day looks like, and how that stimulates you. But just to understand a little bit more of your background,
yes.
So 15 years in investing, but you just mentioned writing code. So you were writing code as part of this career in investing, to be clear?
Yes. So there are this whole set of quantitative investors where people who write code are the people who are doing the investing because it's the code that does the trading, does the investing. Yeah. So a person who's a quantitative investor needs to know about the markets, about code, and about the stocks and all the different aspects of things. Yeah.
And I heard you mention the Norwegian sovereign fund or Norwegian pension fund, CalPERS. I feel like these are some of the big pension funds that I've heard of. I'm
Yes.
not fluent in that world, but
Yes.
Those are some of the biggest pots of money around, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I realize I'm going further back rather than in the right direction here, Sajama, but I think it's interesting. So I'm also just looking at your LinkedIn and seeing Indian Institute of Technology. That's IIT. That's of the very prestigious family of universities in India. Correct?
That's right. I went to IIT Bombay. It's a great school.
So you came to the States to get a master's degree to continue your education
for a PhD. Yeah.
For your PhD.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you have what I perceive by looking at your LinkedIn and hearing you speak, a very successful career as a quantitative investor, deploying capital or making capital allocation decisions for some of the biggest funds in the world. And you do that for a decade and a half, and it's stimulating. And then what starts to happen that causes, that starts pointing you in the direction where you now are?
So a couple of different things. One is, I happened to be at a turning point. I worked for a small investment company that used to focus on in the Asian markets, and COVID happened, and we had a lot of volatility in our books, and it was time to move on. The company closed down. We were one of the largest investors in Asia, and we closed down right soon after COVID. And so I spoke to other companies which do quantitative investment. I had a few offers, and I was trying to decide, okay, what do I want to do long term? And I had heard of ETA before that, a few years before that, and over the years, as you work in a company, regardless of what kind of company it is, you see decisions being made, and the future of employees and the company depending on the decisions, right? And then you start to think. So sometimes you may start to think, look, I think we should be doing it in this other way. Maybe this decision should have been this personnel decision, or this direction, or things like that, right? So, and ETA gives me an opportunity to actually, do that and see. We can see whether I was right or not. I've had these thoughts for a while, and so it was great. It was a great breaking point in my career. So, and I said, okay, let me do it now.
What I'm kind of hearing there is, in at least in developers, which is a world I'm familiar with, software developers.
Yes.
There's kind of the two types of software developer: those that want to just be software developers and remain technical for the duration of their careers, and then those that want to become managers and move into managers. And there's a pretty strict bifurcation there, because a lot of the kind of technical folks really just, they don't want to deal with management. And or being managers. And what I'm hearing from you is that, in fact, after 15 years of being a pretty quantitative person, I don't know if you were managing people or not, but you actually felt yourself drawn to making management decisions and trying your hand at management and making decisions that could really impact an organization, versus just kind of being in the code and in the numbers for the next stage of your career.
I think it's not just management, because so when you're a middle manager somewhere, let's say, you really don't get to you manage people, but you're not managing the direction of the whole thing in a way. And also, even if you're a technical person, at least in the space where I was, it's very different from software programming. The person who founded the fund I used to work for used to write code all day long. So it's not about it's not that you don't, it's not that when you write code, you're not making decisions. What I mean is, it's not just managing people, but also, basically determining the direction of how things, evolve. Yeah,
it's strategic decisions.
That's right. Yeah.
You were drawn to seeing if you could try your hand at.
Yeah.
And you'd heard about ETA. Just do you recall? Did you have friends who had done it? Do you recall how it first came on your radar?
I think it might have been a podcast or a blog. I read a lot about topics that are not my profession, not related to my profession in any way. So it was one of the things that I discovered at that time. So that there is this ETA. I remember many years ago looking at the Stanford search page, but not paying that much attention to it and thinking, oh, that's because they have a paper and they show data. So I'm always reading papers that have some data and some conclusions, and one of my favorite things is about how data can be used to say anything, right? So data, and there is a lot of replication failure in the industry and statistics industry. But anyway, so I was just reading that paper from that perspective of, this is another interesting business-related paper and things like that. But yeah, I think, I remember in one of your podcasts, you had talked about buying a porta potty business. And I remember a long time ago hearing about that and then mentioning it to a colleague. And the colleague was laughing at me and saying, oh, yeah, and then you could do that. And then you could go to porta potty conferences and meet other people and discuss the techniques. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting thing, interesting perspective.
There should be a porta potty business filter those of us, there are two types of people in the world. Those of us who love the idea of a porta potty business, and those of us who don't. And probably everybody listening to this is in the first camp.
That's right.
Okay. Well, Sajama, so you've said, you kind of recognize that now is the moment in your career to
Yes.
Put yourself in a position where you could make strategic decisions, and doing so by buying a business.
Yeah.
Did you get any pushback, or did you get any, head scratching responses from your network when you told them you were going to embark on this path? Because if you don't have people in your network who have bought businesses, this is classically kind of a decision that people respond with, what are you talking about? Buy a business?
Oh, no. Well, I just did it, and then one day when I bought the business, I told my friends and family that I bought a small company here in California.
Okay.
Yeah. So
people in your network, something tells me they respect your judgment, Sajama. So you probably didn't. Whatever you do, they probably are like, she knows what she's doing.
Honestly, I didn't ask for advice from people on whether I should do it. Of course, my family, my husband, he's on board and fully supportive. But I did do all the usual. I spoke to in the first few months. I wrote to hundreds. Literally, I spoke to 100, close to 100 people, either searchers or business owners. Who were running businesses, small businesses throughout the U.S. I just did cold calling, cold emailing. There are those statistics in the search literature about, things, what percentage fail. There is some there's some uncertainty about whether the percentages reflected there are correct or not, because there is survivorship bias, and especially on the self-funded side. Right. And so a lot of people, so I spoke to lots of people and learned a lot.
Well, in these conversations, other than enjoying yourself, were you trying to decide or learn what your chances of success were, or if you were to embark on this path, what the day-to-day would look like? And was that a professional lifestyle you wanted? What were you trying to learn, or just kind of as much as you could absorb, and then you were going to distill that into your own conclusions?
Yeah, it's a little bit like, let's say you're going on a new backpacking trip, right? So you don't know, so you get a map of the place, right? You obtain a map and you kind of read it beforehand. And so you know that you're not going to take a tangent and end up, in the middle of nowhere, or you're not going to, reach. You want to make sure that you reach the trailhead by sunset, etc. Those kinds of things. So it was not so much to make a decision about whether to do it, because surely, having worked in the industry for a long time, I was pretty sure that there is a role out there. There is a company out there that would fit my background, where I would be useful. So most important thing is that, am I useful to that organization, right? And if I am, then I will enjoy it, and the organization will benefit from it. And I know that there are organizations out there where I would be useful. It was just that I wanted to know common mistakes. I want to know what it is that I don't know, basically. What is it that I might change something, and then things may go bad or something like, so I just wanted to know, what is it that I don't know? Sure. What are the things that people found that they made, the mistakes they made, or the things that they found really, really valuable? Sometimes you hear people say simple things that they just leaned in on that one thing, and it took them very, very far, So, just wanted to hear from people about their learning, so I don't have to do it myself, basically, through my own experience.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you had a clear understanding that business buyer fit was an important criterion, that you were going to look for a business where you could really lean on your expertise, and that would be the puzzle piece that fits the other puzzle piece being the business, and that together there would be really a lot of value created. What were some of your other criteria that you landed on in your search?
It had to be somewhere close to where I am. So geographic, industry, I was agnostic. Size, I wanted it to be in the standard self-funded range, because under 2 million EBITDA. And the reason for that was that in the first step, so I'm pretty agnostic about whether you should raise, whether you should take investor capital or not. I think at the right point in time, investor capital can really is the right ingredient to add to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. But right at the beginning, I wanted space and time for me to really understand the industry well, and figure out some of the things that I don't know about because I'm new to operating a small business. Like operating a small company is very different from working for the kind of companies that I've worked for before. So it was important for me to be independent, right in the beginning, even though that's not how I'm thinking about it in the long term. Right in the beginning, I wanted to just do it myself, and make the mistakes, learn, and then, prepare the right plan for the long term. Yeah. So
interesting. So initially you didn't want to take investor capital. You wanted, you didn't want to have to basically be responsible for other people's capital and have them kind of breathing down your neck for certain performance expectations. You wanted to have the space and the time to really learn at your own pace, or as you felt comfortable, but you were open to investor capital longer term. But you recognized that how you'd use that capital would be much better informed once you actually acquired and had been operating a business for some time.
That's right.
So you were self-funded, and you were gonna bring all of your own capital to the equity and I assume it was kind of an SBA. You were expecting to do an SBA.
Yes. Yeah.
Deal, finance deal.
Yeah.
Great. And you said you wanted it to be, it was geographically constrained, so you wanted to be in your area. You're in the Bay Area. So tell us about the actual search. Once you had these criteria, how did you go out and conduct your search?
I mainly did brokered search, and I spoke to lots of people. I didn't have any interns. I had interns for a little bit, didn't work out as well as I had expected. Hopefully, I'll do a better iteration of it sometime in the future. I just looked at a lot of deals that came through, and so I had, like I told you, I spoke to a lot of people who were my mentor. I consider them my peer mentors, and I got an advice from someone I respect a lot, who said, write an LOI. The very first thing he said after the first 2 months, he's like, write an LOI. And so I think that was very, very useful, to just get started, right? Okay, so if you see a deal, what are the terms at which you will take this, what are the terms at which you're willing to take over this responsibility for the next 5 years? Think through that and write up a structure that works for you, and see if it works for the person who's looking to sell or retire, right? So, so there are these, So I mainly did a brokered search. I went and spoke to lots of people, did phone calls. Whenever I looked at a particular industry and I went deep into it, and I was in the LOI stage and things like that, then I would write cold emails to other people in the industry across the country, and I would talk to them, things like that, basically to learn more about the industry and see if it's the right fit. So ultimately, like I said, about the trail map analogy, right? Yeah, you see the map, but when you're there, it feels different. When you're actually there, it feels different. And I found, so one of the surprising things, people say, oh, you should look for recurring revenue or blah, blah, like a seller who's cares about the company for the long term and these kinds of things. And I found it interesting how they actually show up in real life, compared to when I heard about them in the, from other people or in the papers, things like that.
Sajama, but can you elaborate on that? What was different compared to what you had been expecting or had read?
I think, when you, the strength of an ongoing, a going concern, right? So when you value companies like I did before, I was doing this, there is going concern value and then the liquidation value. There are two values for a business, right? So then the going concern value is based on current financials. So the ongoing momentum of a company that has been running for a while, that was quite surprising to me, and so it's very real, so when a company is moving in one direction, it does keep moving in that direction. So it's good and bad, right? So everything is, yeah. So I guess, sometimes you might be, when you're talking about doing the transaction, maybe there is some discussion about, oh, this is what the historicals have been and this is what it'll be in the future. I gained a lot of respect for how, what has been in the history will continue for the long term. So, any changes to it will be hard won and take a long time. If you have a company with a certain culture and you are looking to change the culture, it's going to take a long time for you to change that culture. You can say the word change the culture, but to actually change the culture takes a long time. At the same time, if customers like that company, they're going to continue to like that company for a long while. So you have plenty of time. So there's no need for, as a searcher, when you're taking over the business, you don't have to worry that much. It will continue. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Well, that's actually, so, as you pointed out, this insight that you had, that there's a stickiness to an ongoing concern, works. There's both a pro and a con to that.
Yes.
The pro meaning that it's probably not going to go to zero, at least not immediately. I mean, it's got some staying power, which is part of the reason that we're attracted to this category,
That's
this
right.
opportunity. But then the con is that any change you want to do is probably going to be slower yes. going than you might hope or you might expect. So can you net that out? Was it net positive news or net negative news? Like, did it make you like the opportunity more, perhaps?
Yeah, I think you like the opportunity more because then you get to
Less
choose
risk.
what it is that you want to get into, and when you get into that thing that you've chosen continues, and then you get to choose the things that you are able to make a change in, the directions that the things that you are able to bring to the table. So in fact, it is good news. It's good news whenever you understand the behavior of a system that you're working in, regardless of what it is, right?
Says the data scientist. Now, speaking of your data scientist background, I'm hearing you refer back to your years of valuing businesses. And you just breaking out, what did you put it? The ongoing concern value and
going
the
concern and
selling for parts value, or the liquidation, right? The liquidation value, which is actually not a framework I've even heard after 150 interviews. So that's news to me. But how much were you leaning on all of this deep expertise that you spent 15 years building in your search? Is it really helping you kind of understand the valuations that you're looking at, or not so much because it's just so different?
Sometimes it's difficult to say whether, so I was not explicitly using any of those things, but, things like, things like when you are an investor in a company, in companies and stocks, you're valuing them based on quality, right? Valuation, the quality of the business, and the trend. So that's, if you look, those are the three main categories. And then how do you come to the numbers around that? Is a different, there are 100 different inputs that go into each of those buckets typically as a quantitative investor. And so I think the same framework pretty much is used in search from what I can see. People look at the trend, people look at the quality of the business, which is recurring revenue, things like that. And people look at the valuation. A simple crude way to do that is multiples, like the standard multiples. So I think pretty much the same broad framework is used, maybe not the same language and and the inputs are different. You assess the quality by actually meeting the owner and also by looking at the financials. So you can see, so when people talk about lifetime value or the churn rate, for example, those are quality metrics. They talk about the quality of the business. Yeah. So because they don't talk about, so you could have the same recurring revenue, but you can have a different churn rate, for example. So the same amount of recurring revenue will imply, if you just did based on going concern value, you would have some multiple that you would come up with. But then based on the churn rate, that will modify the multiple that you should apply because the quality is different. I'm just saying an example.
Absolutely.
For illustration, yeah. But I didn't explicitly use that.
Sure.
And I find that it's not explicit. So for example, right now I do some sales. I do customer relationship and sales for my company right now. And when I go and talk to people, I find that, even though I have never done sales before, I find that having a couple decades of experience working in different places is useful, informs my behavior in an underlying way. And in the same way, I would guess maybe evaluation. It's not that I explicitly used any of that, but
it's sort of foundational experience and knowledge that you have that you're standing upon to do your now job. Sajama, so tell us about how you found the business that you did, and tell us about said business, please.
Yeah, I found it. There were two owners of the business, two primary owners, a father and daughter. The father had been one of the original founders, and the daughter had joined pretty soon after the company was founded. This was almost 35 years ago. And they had been running it ever since. There were other founders and people involved intermittently, but these two were the common thread from the beginning to now. And they had been looking to retire for a couple of years. And finally, they had tried to do something on their own and finally reached out to a broker and had listed their business. And I just found it online, and then I was introduced to them through the broker. And then I went and met them. Had lots of discussions, all of the standard stuff.
Well, 35-year-old business, that's great age. So tell us about the business, Sajama.
It's a professional services business. It's an environmental health and safety consulting company. And it's slightly different from, so typically when you think of a consulting company, doesn't have much going concern value because all the value is in the principals who are providing the services. But in this particular case, it had been aged. It had aged for a long time, and it was the right niche. So CDMS provides ongoing. So when a company, when there is an industrial facility of any kind, let's say manufacturing or distribution. There are federal, state, and local regulations that apply on the environmental side and the safety side of things. So typically, if you are a business that is, if you're a manufacturing company which makes anywhere, say, from a revenue from even, let's say, $2-3 million all the way up to $100 million or more, or even $500 million. So in that range, you don't have a large EH&S staff. You don't have a large environmental health and safety staff. You don't, definitely, even if you have one person, say, working for you who's dedicated to environmental health and safety, they are not experts in all the regulations that could apply to your facility. And so what the company does is it does several different things. So initially, if you wanted us to come in and do an audit and tell you, go through all possible regulations that could apply to your facility, what documentation you have on site, and how your site is laid out and things like that, we would review everything and give you like a 300-page document that would tell you what you do have and what you're missing, things like that. So we could do an audit. Or we could, if you wanted any one vertical, let's say air quality, the air quality district you're having some communication with the air quality district and they want you to do something, we would evaluate that for you. Sometimes we, speak with the regulators on behalf of our clients and tell them, no, this regulation does not apply to this facility. They don't need to do that, for example. We do things like that for our clients. But a large part of our business is taking off the ongoing maintenance from their shoulders. Our clients have their core business to deal with. It's not easy to run a business these days. They are trying to manufacture heart stents or do plating for cases that go into cars or whatever it is. And if they have to also be experts in all these different regulations that apply to them, that would be too much of a burden for them. So we take that over. We do, we do ongoing subscription service for them. So when they, so we would visit their site every month or every 2 months. We conduct audits when we visit their site. We gather data, conduct interviews, but most of the work we do for our clients, we do from our office, where we write reports and talk to all these agencies and take care of all their reporting and compliance burden.
And so what you're doing is auditing and assessing their compliance with regulation. But you are not implementing.
Let's say a tank, they're doing a hazardous waste treatment and their tank is leaking. We don't fix the leak. But we do implement their compliance. In California, there are air quality districts that regulate what chemicals you use and how they escape into the air and affect air quality. Then there is sanitation district, and each sanitation district has its own regulations, although they have something common. So there is wastewater. When you run a manufacturing facility, you wash some parts and that water has to go somewhere. It goes into the sewer line. Mm-hmm. And the sanitation district wants to make sure you're not sending something down the sewer line. Then there is rainwater. Mm-hmm. Let's say you are dragging pollutants out into the road outside your facility, and that could go into and harm fish. So there is rainwater regulation, stormwater regulation. Then there is the fire department regulation, mm-hmm. which says, when our firefighters come into your facility, we want to know if there is some hazardous chemical there, Then, and then there is other regulations associated with toxic substances, how hazardous waste is disposed of. And so each facility has a lot of regulations so that even just to prepare a plan, keep it updated on how you're going to make sure that you are doing things properly in each of these aspects of your business, and preparing the inspection logs. Maybe the client side does the inspections, but preparing the right inspection logs and maintaining them, what they should check for when they go and do their inspections, and what should be reported. We do the reporting to all the different government agencies ourselves. The client doesn't do that. We gather information from them. But we are kind of like tax preparers. We gather information from them, we do the analysis, and then we do the submittals for them.
So the nature of this is, of course, ongoing, as you've said, recurring. Uh-huh. So you're there's obviously an ongoing need to comply with regulations, and so X factory is going to need you to come back year after year, or depending on whatever the kind of the frequency of demonstration of compliance is. Maybe it's every 2 years, every 5 years. I don't know. And they'll just keep coming back to you for that. So do you have like established contracts with your customers, or do they just call you every time, every 23 months and say, hey, can you guys come back in?
No, for most of our clients, we have established contracts, and we visit them periodically, and we gather information. We do things for them periodically whenever they are needed.
Sajama, you'd said about how many consulting businesses, like there's not a lot of inherent value to them because it's all in the principles, brains and deeds. How is this business not that? Why wasn't, and this founder and his daughter who'd been involved for so long, how is this business not just all about the principles?
I think I think it happened because one of the founders was an electrical engineer who had worked in GE for a long time, and he had this engineering mindset, which was like, complying with this regulation takes this, these are the things you need to gather from the, client. This is the information you need to gather, and these are the steps you need to take in order to comply. So he had thought through for each regulation, the process to follow, and also, how to change the process over time. So there was an infrastructure to do both the first layer, and also the overseeing layer. And I think it happened because the company had been around for a long time. So I bet you initially when they started off, they were just doing these things and all the value, and over time they evolved to have these things broken down. So that's very useful to have, to be able to, how do we deliver a service level to our clients, a high level of service to our clients, and the only way we can do that is if all of us follow the same process.
Over time, there had been process that had been put into place, SOPs. The practice had grown large enough that there was also just other people doing the work. It wasn't just the founders or the principals out in the field doing the work. And so it had just reached a level of maturation that it wasn't all about the principles.
That's
anymore.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to get to what your life has been like now that you are the one making strategic decisions, and what your life has been like as an operator. But a couple more questions just on the business opportunity and this business itself. What does this industry look like of environmental health and safety compliance? Is this a fragmented industry? Are there a lot of such businesses? Is the TAM big? Like, give us a picture of what it looks like, and what you saw as growth opportunities if you were to put yourself into this industry.
Yeah. So I saw and it's definitely fragmented, right? And it came into being in the 80s when there were a lot of regulations that were passed, 80s in California and at the federal level. And it is highly fragmented. There are people who are single person consultants. There are large companies, which do hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. And the reason it's fragmented, there is a lot of small companies with 5 employees, let's say. And there is several with just 1 employee, and there's several with 15 employees, and so on. And the reason it's like that is because, like every other professional services business industry, even at a small scale, the principals make plenty of money. So it's financially comfortable at a pretty small scale. You don't have to have a large scale for you to have a good life. And the problems are interesting. Think about a person, I really relate to many of the founders because, coming from a scientific engineering background, right? So these are people like the person who ran the people who ran this business before I took over. They really enjoy the technical details of the things, and it had grown to a size that was comfortable for them. And day in and day out, they would talk about, oh, this tank, there is this customer that does this hazardous waste treatment system. They're trying to set it up. And, are they going to use a flocculant, or whatever it is, those are the kind of discussions they would have. And I didn't even know what a flocculant was. I had to look it up online. So, so for that reason, it stays fragmented.
And so did you see, therefore, that there was an opportunity that spelled opportunity to grow nicely? Because for an owner to have an appetite to get bigger than that, there was a lot of opportunity to do so. Is that the kind of conclusion to that?
So actually, when I was, a long time ago, when I was growing in my career, I remember reading something that, when you're a woman, right, you go and negotiate. So there's all this literature about negotiation, and do men do it better, women do it better, and things like that. And they found that when a woman is negotiating, if she thinks about it as doing on behalf of some other people who are, her family, it could be her family or her team or something like that, then she would do better at that negotiation. There are some studies that show that, and I find that that's the lens that I'm most comfortable with. I find it very useful. So if I think about growing the company now that I've been here a year and a half, so I may have had different thoughts a couple of years ago before I started running this business, but I find what really motivates me, what I find most comfortable, is to think about my team and to think about, all these small teams all over California, and what are an employee who joins any environmental health and safety consulting company, what are their long-term goals and prospects, and if we can build a company where all of these employees have a bright future, they have several years of growth, career growth, lots of learning, increase in compensation, and interesting problems to solve, then if a company is able to provide that, then all the other pieces will fall into place, so the compensation for shareholders, taking care of clients, making sure that the vendors are doing well. All of those things will be taken care of. And so that's my analysis of the industry. Once I've been there for a while, is that that there is a lot of good talent, both at the managerial level and at the entry level in these companies throughout California, highly fragmented, and if we could, and there is an opportunity to build a company that would provide a really good experience for these employees who are, many of the employees who come and many of the people who want to join the team, they are looking for meaning. They are attracted the environmental science, people with environmental science background or chemical engineering background. They took when they are looking to join a company such as ours or any of our competitors, they are looking for they took the engineering degree or environmental science degree in college for a reason, right? They are looking to have a career where they make an impact and also have a career where they are solving interesting problems. These are people who have a certain ambition. So I've worked in lots of big companies where there are lots of career opportunities, growth opportunities and things like that. And it's really motivating for me to think that the kind of mindset that I have seen in academia and in the industry that I've been in, that can be translated to form a company culture that really it really empowers the team members who join, basically these professional team members who join us.
Sajama, all of that, plus some of our conversation on our pre-call about your team and about how really motivating that's become for you, and how a big part of your story is empowering your team in the ways that you just described. Reminds me of a theme now that seems to come up a lot, where many folks who buy businesses, I guess often in blue collar, they acquired blue collar businesses, which is not the case here, but maybe it doesn't have to be blue collar specific. That they set out to acquire a business for a number of reasons, but top of the list was not necessarily benefiting their employees in a positive way. I'm sure they wanted to be good bosses and good and good leaders, but it wasn't like I'm setting out to have a positive impact on a group of employees, and buying a business is the way to do that. But they learn after a year or two in the seat that actually has been the most gratifying part of their journey. Sajama, we're still got a ways to go. Still got a bunch of questions for you. So just returning to the business that you bought. By the way, CDMS, if people missed that, is what it goes by, which stands for what?
Chemical Data Management Systems.
Give us a picture of the business. The 35-year-old business, but if any numbers around how big it is, any dollar numbers, if you can or can't, employee numbers, just so people have a sense. Number of locations.
Yeah, there are 15 employees and 2 locations. And we serve hundreds of clients throughout California.
And that state keeps coming up over and over again. My one-time home and still beloved California. Of course, California is famous or infamous, depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, for its regulation. Is this type of business one that California is particularly fertile for? It must be. But do you see an opportunity to expand into different states, or is this somehow like a California particular industry or business?
No, I think, believe it or not, I found out a few months into running CDMS that there are many areas in which, the state of Washington is more stringent than California, for example. But yes, California, it's possible that California, so there is this aspect of, when you're talking about environmental regulation or safety regulation, we do safety as well. So when you do, there is the aspect of the Congress or state or federal Congress passing a law, and then there is the aspect of enforcement. So I don't have a good read for what enforcement is like in other states. I have a very good read for what enforcement like is in California. So any regulation or any law has only as much teeth as the enforcement causes it to do so. And so I think it's not. In fact, there are many regulations that we help that are at the federal level, and we help with. There's something called toxic report inventory, tax toxic. So there are many regulations that are at the federal level that we deal with, and there are some regulations that are California specific. But I've researched other states, and they have something similar. If not identical. So there is, I think, but from a business perspective, again, thinking about it from that holistic thing that I was saying, CDMS needs to grow in California for a long time before it expands outside California.
And I figured, it's not like there isn't regulation around the country, but I couldn't resist calling it out, because California and regulation in the same sentence, it has to be noted.
I think the enforcement is. I'm guessing that the enforcement is different.
And Sajama, going back to your criteria and business buyer fit, and you having a clear sense that like you wanted to acquire a business where you thought your skill set would plug in nicely and provide some unlock. What did you see here that played to your strengths and you thought was such a nice fit with you?
The infrastructure that we are currently working on, definitely we use databases and we collect data. We have scripts, and this existed before I joined CDMS. And so I think for it's not common for an environmental consulting company to do that, but it exists in CDMS because one of the founders was an engineer, and I think that. But my ability to help that has not materialized yet. It will, hopefully. So when you buy a company that's 35 years old, there is a lot of tech. There's a lot of debt of various kinds. In software industry, you'll hear this word called technology debt. So CDMS had a few things that needed to be taken care of, and I've been working on them systematically. And the database systems, the databases and scripts that we use were not the highest priority, but they have now become. So possibly in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll work on that. So I think there my background comes into place, but then also I think most importantly where my background, so I've worked, like I said, always worked in places where there were a group of technical people who worked collaboratively. Without much supervision, and always delivering direct practical results for our clients. And, how do you build a culture like that? How do you build a team like that that's independent and yet accountable and empowered? So that's it's something that comes very naturally to me that I think would benefit CDMS very much. And other than that, I would say that the skill, like I said, there was no reason I should have done investing after doing a PhD in data science, right? So it's not. So it's a whole new set of problems here, but I really enjoy looking at new problems and solving them. For example, figuring out what is the highest ROI investment in a small company, and thinking through that, and yeah. So, and the other thing is being able to think about many different things at the same time. I don't know if it's a skill or an opportunity, but I enjoy that. And hopefully, in a few years, we'll find out that I did a good job of it. There are HR things to be taken care of. There are systems, there is marketing, there is sales, there is technical development for environmental specialists. There is a whole range of things that you think about every single day. So I think more than anything, there is a skill of thinking big picture and also delivering the small details, right? So that's what one of the things I think unique about running a small company is that you have to do both at the same time. You can't be just a big picture vision person. You have to. But you can't be just a detailed person. You have to be able to do both. Yeah, I think so. Spending many years doing both, very useful.
Are you scratching the itch to make strategic decisions that you had hoped you would by owning a small business?
Yes. So for example, some of the things, we used to do a little bit of revenue on one-off projects that would arise once in a while when a facility closed down or when a facility, things like that, that were more related to remediation or hazardous material cleanup. There is a whole separate industry, and I know in the search space there is a lot of interest in that industry as well. So that's something we used to do occasionally, but that was not our strength. So we got out of that. We don't do that anymore. What we've done is we've grown 15% since I took over, but also we've changed the quality of the work that we are doing. So that's a change that we've made.
The quality of work or the quality of revenue?
The quality of revenue.
You're doing more projects where you can add value, and presumably they're kind of more recurring in nature. Is that what you mean?
Yes, more recurring in nature and more value to the client for the same dollar that we take from them.
Can you quantify that? How that shift has been, the quality of revenue? Do you have any numbers off the top of your head?
So I think for the first year, we didn't grow at all, but so there was about 10% of revenue that was from this work, but the amount of headache was more like 25%. So that has been removed, and it was replaced with just the regular revenue, the things that we are good at. And then this year we've made a big push to grow, but grow very much in the direction that we like. So it's the subscription revenue basically.
And Sajama, when you talk about growth, and now that you've been in the seat, what type of growth are we talking about? Are you talking about organic sales-based growth? I mean, I imagine this is kind of a heavy sales, very much a heavy to grow is very much kind of direct sales to grow organically. But then, of course, you mentioned the industry fragmentation. So what about inorganic growth? Talk to us about how you're planning your growth.
Both. I'm thinking I want to do both. I think, so one of the important things that people will talk about when you talk to searchers, having a sense of urgency, right, to make a change. So I would like to grow significantly in the next 3 to 5 years. I have the strategic decisions you were asking about, like there is now I communicate directly with my team every month about what our goals are, 1, 3, 5-year goals, and what are we doing to achieve them, and how have we done so far, things like that. So that's a big change that has happened. And I think to hit our goals, we'll have to do both organic and inorganic growth. And I'm working on both. And I'm speaking to other people who run businesses such as CDMS. And there are many who are looking to retire at this time, and I would love to provide an opportunity for them to to do so. So, for example, I always like to show what have we achieved at CDMS in the last 2 years, right? So all the employees who wanted to stay have stayed. They are all doing well. They're happy here, and they're taken care of. They have better systems, and we've improved benefits that we provide for our employees. And and all the clients are taken care of, really well. They're all happy. And we recently received an email from a client which said, "Thank you. We have had 6 months of no accidents in our facility, and the CDMS, you played a critical role in making that happen," something like that. So I think if people are looking to retire and they want to see, okay, what is it that they are picturing for their company going forward, keeping their brand alive, making sure that their employees are taken care of, and making sure that their clients are taken care of. So I think that in the last 2 years, we've delivered that, right? And the services that we are not doing anymore, we are referring them out to other reliable people who will take care of the clients for that. So in that sense, I think that would be the value proposition for inorganic growth. And for organic growth, we are dialing in our systems, improving the quality of service. And I had a recent experience with a website. I wanted somebody to help me rebuild our website, and happy to work with them. And they took 2 months, terrible service. And if they had worked out for me, I would have referred them to 10 of my friends, and they would have had so much business. But they didn't deliver for me, so they're not going to grow. So I think CDMS, the CDMS organic growth will happen in that way. Is that we improve our service and we grow organically through word of mouth. That's the best in this industry. That's the best way to do it.
I don't think it's just your industry. An interview that aired a week ago, James Bloom, who acquired a very small mechanical HVAC business and has 8x'd revenue over the last 4 years. And really the core thing that has been the engine of growth is just delivering quite high quality service, higher than the competition. And that alone has just pulled revenue out of his business.
I heard that interview and it was so inspiring. So cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. Sajama, I have just 2 more questions for you. First is one, a business question, and then one, a personal question. The business question is, so this is a very technical business. You are a technical person, but you don't have technical expertise in environmental and health compliance.
Yes.
How much, first of all, did you perceive that as a challenge, as a con, or how did you approach that in your own mind, and how well versed in the technical nature of this business have you become?
I love learning new things, so I didn't think of it as a challenge. And also, the principals of the business who were exiting were not delivering the service themselves. So from that perspective, I was comfortable. And yeah, I've learned a lot. I'm sure the environmental specialists who actually deliver the service of CDMS will say, I don't know that much, but I know. I would say I have a good big picture sense for all the different regulations that apply at different facilities. When I walk through a client site, I can point out what they need to do and what they don't need to do. So I can figure out what they need, what they don't need. So I have plenty of depth in that way. And one of the things, I've been here for 2 years, I've been going to client sites all the time. And I've seen what is delivered to all of our clients. So I've had an ability to learn. I've had an opportunity to learn much more quickly than I would if I were servicing one client, for example.
Sajama, last question for you. So we touched on at the beginning that you got your undergraduate at a very prestigious university in India. So you are Indian, and so this is also a story. Your story is one of being an immigrant and having a very successful career, and then buying a business as an immigrant. Is there anything that you would tell others who are earlier on in their journey than you are, but might also be similarly situated, about the path of buying a business as somebody who has come here from another country?
Well, in my case, I've lived in this country for 25 years, so most of my adult life has been spent in this country. So I don't know how to conduct business in India. I've never done so. Never even worked in India. So So I don't know how I would say. So except that, one of the great things about, I would say maybe this is a common sentiment among immigrants, but the great thing about this country is the number of opportunities that you have, and I found, and the other thing is, to address the matter of diversity in general. So more than 50% of small companies are run by women. I don't know if you know this fact. I remember reading something like that.
I did not.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. In the US, or maybe it was a California state. I should look it up. But anyway, I think that I found there is a right fit for you, whoever, whatever your background is, or ultimately people are, when people, let's say you're a searcher and people are looking to retire, they want somebody to take care, they want to be fairly compensated for the value they've built. They want their employees and their vendors and their clients to be taken care of. And if you provide that to them, and if you come across as competent enough and good-natured enough to be able to do that, then they will, they'll choose you to do the transition. It makes no difference, I believe, about whether you're an immigrant or any of the other factors.
Sajama, how can people get in touch if they have a question? What's your preferred way? Is it LinkedIn, email?
LinkedIn is great. Email is, I'll send you an email and you could put it in your show notes, and Sajama at CDMS.com. Yeah.
Great.
Would love to talk to people. In fact, I'd love to talk to people who are in professional services, who are running professional services companies. And also I'd love to talk to people who are civil engineers in California. If I'm targeting some people to talk to right now, it's those two people.
Well, why don't we plug that, Sajama? I know, I believe that are you hiring? I saw a post on Search Funder. Is that for a role within CDMS?
Yeah, no, we are not directly hiring, but we want somebody who will work with us part-time to develop one side of our business.
Okay. Basically. Civil engineers in California.
Yeah.
Reach out.
Yes, please.
Sajama Mitta, thank you so much for coming on Acquiring Minds. Great to talk to you.
So good to talk to you, Will. Bye then.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come. Stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.